Okay, I think we're about to get started for it. It looks like it's just setting it up. Cool. There we go. Ryan, Chris, Mary, what I'll do is I'll send the live stream link in the comments. If y'all could throw that in the Discord for me, that would be great.
Cool.
Okay. Let me get that for it. If I can use that in a copy. All right. There we go. Going to Ryan, minimize. Bring it in. All right. Here is that link for anybody who wants to watch up for it, and then we will. Oh. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. All right. So Stephen is the. Where can I click to bring that up? Is it just the one? Drag it over. Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that.
Trying to see where it went to. I saw it, and then I don't know where.
Oh, it's there.
I see it, but I'm trying to drag it over more.
Oh, just bring the cursor onto that screen.
Ah, so that's how they're doing it. Okay. Okay. We're good.
And then press the green button at the top to make it screen.
We're at this one.
Yeah, the green one.
That's
the green one.
that one.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. I'm gonna I think we're good to go at this point. So the projector is on the screen. So if you see me looking back and forth, that's why. So, all right. Are we ready to get started, everybody in the crowd? That was not loud enough. I want to hear that. There we go. There you go.
Nice.
All right. Everybody, welcome to the My Little Pony Deck Builder and RPG Chat with Renegade Studios. We are joined today by Mary. We are joined by Chris, and we are also joined by Ryan. How are y'all doing today? Are y'all doing great?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad y'all were able to join us today and able to just talk about My Little Pony. So before we get started, can each of you give us a little bit introduction as well of who you're all with Renegade Studios and what your position is and who your favorite pony is, because this is a pony convention and we have to make sure that it is a pony convention, so we have to make sure that we know who your favorite pony is.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm Mary Bellamy. I'm a licensed freelance illustrator for Renegade. I've done comic covers for IDW and some other merchandise. You might know me from my other work online. I've done coloring for comics for Scholastic, Oni, First, Second, all tons of companies. I've done a lot of animation work in the past, and I've done some toys and stuff, like my toys from San Diego Comic-Con wound up on Sci-Fi Channel. Of course, my favorite pony of the main six, I'm sorry, I have to say there's a tie. It's Applejack and Fluttershy. Because
we got some Applejack and Fluttershy in the crowd. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Mary. What about you, Chris?
All right. I'm a freelance designer with Renegade. I design lanterns to Harvest Festival and Spell Smashers with them before I jumped onto Team Pony. And then my favorite pony of the series is Fluttershy because how cute she is and how she breaks out of her shell. I can personally relate to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Finally, last but not least, Ryan. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your involvement with Renegade Studios, and your favorite pony.
I am a freelance author and RPG designer for Renegade, so I helped design the Essence 20 system, and I wrote like 5 of the chapters for the My Little Pony role-playing game core rulebook, as well as the adventure that comes with the GM screen. And my favorite pony is Rainbow Dash. She's got confidence, she's got skills, and sometimes she's a little lazy. So all related.
We can all relate. We can all relate. Thank y'all. I appreciate it. We're just going to dive right in for sure. So our first question for y'all is, what is your history and or background with like the My Little Pony series, and what got you involved specifically with Renegade Studios to develop the RPG as well as the deck builder?
I guess I'll go first. I've been an OG pony fan since the original G1 series. I have over 250 of the toys. So I just always have loved animation and comics. And originally I had shown my artwork to an editor at IDW And a year later, they're like, hey, so we have this comic. Do you think you want to draw ponies? And I'm like, yes. So I did about 10 covers with them. And for a while, I hadn't heard anything more. And I posted some of my redone commissions on Facebook. And Scott Gaeta, I'm sorry, terrible with names, found myself say, hey, do you want to do some work with us? And then I got hired to work with Renegade. And I've been doing the covers and cards and miscellaneous artwork for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Well, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Ryan, let's go you next.
Sure. So I have some memories of G1. I know me and my brothers, between the four of us, we owned 2 ponies, and we definitely watched the show, but I wasn't as into it as some of the other shows from that era. But then when Friendship is Magic was coming out, it was released at the same time as Transformers Prime and G.I. Joe Renegades, both of which I was excited about. And then a lot of people that were excited about those 2 shows were also excited about Friendship is Magic, and I was like, oh, this is now on my radar. But it wasn't until I had my first daughter, so like 3 seasons into Friendship is Magic, that I was looking for something that I could watch while she was like sleeping on me or while she was in the room. Then I knew there wouldn't be any explosions or anything that would disturb her. And so I was like, you know what? I'll finally give Friendship is Magic a try. It's on Netflix. And I just watched everything that was on Netflix, and I continued to watch it with her as she grew up, and watched it by myself sometimes when she wasn't interested in that day.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Or Ryan, finally, Chris.
So I was a fan of G4 ever since I started seeing memes on Twitter and my social media feeds. Feel like these ponies are all over the place. Everyone's talking about it for some reason. So I figured, give it a shot, and I was blown away by how spectacular it is. So when Renegade announced plans to do a deck building RPG, I thought, I was a freelance designer for them. Maybe there'd be a small chance for me to join up, but I didn't hear back from them. Of course, I didn't prod on it up until they reached out to me. And I was like, okay, something Destiny wise happened, because I was a fan of the show and they needed someone to take on the lead. But I was very caught off guard, very surprised, and thankful I'm in this position now.
Awesome. I do want to focus a little bit on the deck builder first, if that's okay with Mary and Ryan.
That's fine.
Since, as y'all can see on the table, well, y'all can't see it, but our audience members can. We have the boxes from the deck builder. We have Adventures in Equestria, Familiar Faces, and True Talents. And I think everybody knows that there is a princess set coming up here in a couple months. I think it is, Chris, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you got it. The street date should be in sometime in March.
Awesome. So we've got set number 4 coming out with everybody's favorite Princess Celestia, Princess Luna, Cadence, of course. So here's my question for you, Chris, focusing on the deck builder first. Well, where's my question? Here it is. Can we begin kind of talking about the actual development of the mechanics of the deck builder? How it is versus like Power Rangers. If using Power Rangers as the example, or even the CCG, Power Rangers is very much like a PvP type of deck builder, while My Little Pony really encourages you to work together as a team, solve problems. Combat's not really even a focus of it. It's almost more about like gathering resources. It almost reminds me a bit of like deck building plus like a resource management game, such as like, ironically, Heroes of the Grid, where you have to manage like your action economy or your cards or your deck.
Yep. So basically the premise for the Pony deck builder was friendship is the core. You're working together. It was non-negotiable. You had to say that, hey, working as a team and trying to overcome your challenges as a team. And I really like cooperative games as a whole. I've never tried designing one before, and so it was a nice challenge. Plus, when you have a deck builder versus like a collectible card game, like you said, what's in each set, so you're not chasing over booster packs or singles or whatever. You know what you're going to play with, and everyone's going to have fun with the same contents. So for my background in my board games with Renegade, when you're helping each other in lanterns, because you inevitably have to help your opponents getting resources, that was a core feature I had to implement. And as with Spell Smashers, even though you're fighting monsters with your words competitively, the more you hit a monster, the more your opponents are going to swoop in for the kill. So those kind of like turns where you affect your teammates or your opponents, I really like that in my games. So I wanted to really bring that core design theory back into ponies. So with Renegade being asked to do deck builders and working together with Hasbro, I was like, yeah, I can see myself doing this. So yeah, it was really cool.
Awesome, awesome. Kind of building upon that as well. The core set's very much like, as you said, an introduction to Equestria, the main six, and the challenges they face being magical pastel colored ponies essentially in Equestria. In addition, there's also the other two sets. It's about like the B team from season 6, followed by the Cutie Mark Crusaders and Sakura, not to mention like some of the screen caps from across all 9 seasons. So my question is, going into that, it's a little bit peculiar from other games who usually focus on like one season or a mechanic that they want to promote from it. Do you have a particular theme that you have in mind when you are developing a new expansion set, or like for the first one, the core set? Was there any like definites you had to have these in, or ones that you wanted to hold off later on?
Yeah. So I joined the core set really late, so it was all pretty much done for. But they wanted to focus on season 1 primarily because this was the first game, and then you had a lot of content with the main 6, and then it kind of like grew from there. So from familiar faces, it was confirmed I had to do Trixie, Starlight Glimmer, Spike, and Discord because they're the rough and tough villains who became friends of the characters. So and Spike is obviously a non-negotiable, right?
Right.
As we were planning True Talents, the Cutie Mark Crusaders had to be in it, but I had to make an internal struggle between either Big Mac or Zakora. And I chose Zakora because Apple Bloom and Zakora really have a nice relationship with each other. She was there when they tried to do a lot of potions to get their cutie marks and all that stuff. And Apple Bloom's a staunch defender of Zakora's character. So I really like Zakora, had to include her.
Absolutely.
And then for me, when I try to base my next set or next idea, I take a look at what characters make sense. So for example, the Cutie Mark Crusaders had to leave to the royal family, and that's going to come out soon because of that. And then really like trying to focus on making sure I get whatever content I can from season 2 to 9, because there's a whole breadth of content we haven't touched before. And so I'm trying to do my due diligence as a fan to make sure everyone's included.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to make sure I get everybody to get some time in, because I know 1 hour goes really, really fast. So Chris, I think I may have 1 or 2 questions left for you, and I'm going to move on to Mary or Ryan. From concept to shipment, how long does it usually take to develop an expansion, or to even develop a certain card? Like if you're really wanting to develop, say, like a Twilight Sparkle, how much time and effort goes into that?
Probably a few days to a few weeks to a few months. It really depends on what I'm trying to develop, but most of the time a expansion becomes from 5 to 7 months to kind of from ideation to shipment and editing and all that stuff. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Then I got one last question for you. In general, deck builders are rather difficult to play, no matter what type of deck builder it is, because sometimes people have strategies of to thin the deck. Sometimes it's to do the resource management for it. Especially though, it is harder in this one, as you are dependent on your teammates to help you out, gather resources to confront the hurdles and the final challenges. Is there any like advice or offer, or any gameplay tips you can offer to the audience for when you're playing adventures in Equestria?
Yeah, so if you haven't played the core set before, it's really about trying to make your deck bigger and better as possible. You touched upon milling the deck. That's a metagame strategy. You can make sure that your deck is really optimal at a certain basis, and then you have to focus on getting the sugar cubes from locations. But with the True Talents and the Familiar Faces expansion specifically, I introduced the mechanics of Discover. So the more allies you get for your hand and your deck, your teammates could actually benefit even though you're not the active player, which is nice. And then for refashioning the Adventure Row, I was really inspired by Rarity and how she makes her life the runway. So you can change the big picture of the Adventure Row through using info. And info wasn't really touched as a resource in the core game. So I really wanted to address both the problems and both those things you can use to your advantage in the game.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. Mary or Ryan, who wants to go next?
You go ahead, Mary.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'll go.
Awesome. This is perfect. So talking about designing, it's perfect that we follow up with you, Mary, at this point, because before we talk about the artwork of it and your artwork itself, I want to ask each of you, what is your favorite episode?
I guess I'll start. So Hurricane Fluttershy, one of my favorite episodes of all time, just because you really see the dedication that Fluttershy puts into her work. And even though she, gets teased on with her flying ability, she managed to push through and get them over the hump that they needed to.
Awesome.
So
I'm looking up
my
the name of an episode.
Either
so
or.
for me, I'm going to cheat a little bit and I say two, but one doesn't really count. But I really liked the Equestria Girl special because Sunset Shimmer is like totally my spirit animal. She reminds me of one of my characters in my Fofax series, and then basically redeeming herself when she starts out in a negative place. And that just resonates because sometimes you feel like you're put in a box. But if I'm talking about the series proper, I think I like Amending Fences because I like Moon Dancer a lot. And the way that she kind of mirrored Twilight Sparkle and how they never really had a resolution before she just takes off to Equestria to find more friends. And that really spoke to me.
Awesome. It's funny that you mentioned Sunset because in a panel I did last night, I led with I'm glad everybody is here because this is obviously the Sunset Shimmer Appreciation panel. Got a few laughs from it, so definitely can relate. Ryan, what about you? What is your favorite episode?
My favorite episode is Magical Mystery Cure. I think that it's the songs in it are amazing. True Friends is probably my favorite song in the whole series. And there's all these just like micro moments that are very emotional. And it just streams so many of them into the first 15 minutes that I just thought the episode was over. So when Twilight becomes a princess and there's a whole magical transformation and there's another 5 minutes to the episode, it really caught me off guard and it really had left a lasting impression because of it.
Absolutely. It's funny because I see some people laughing in the audience. It's been 10 years since Twilight became an Alicorn princess. It's hard to think about, but here we are in 2023. She's been an Alicorn longer than she's been a unicorn. That just blows my mind. Mary, let's talk about your artwork a little bit. I can find my question. Here it is. Who or what inspired you to get into such an awesome career in art? And what is your favorite medium usually to work with?
So I've always been an artist. My mom was an artist. She drew monsters. My dad was an artist. He drew superheroes. Cartoons were my childhood. You just sit there in front of the Saturday morning cartoons. And I gushed over all that girly stuff. So My Little Pony, Care Bears, Lady Lovely Locks, all of it. I first tried to get into animation, but things kind of didn't work out. So I kind of sidestepped into comic book art. And so I started doing anthologies, writing stories, drawing stories. Then I kind of slid into doing covers. And then I accidentally fell into doing sketch cards for Marvel and DC. All of it just culminated into getting to work on licensed stuff like My Little Pony.
Awesome. What similar question that I gave to Chris, from envisioning to the completed art piece, what is the process that you go through and how long does it take to get to the final piece?
Okay, so I forgot to answer part of your question, but yeah, mostly right now I work in digital. So yeah. I used to draw traditionally. I would do a ballpoint pen sketch because it's just easier to get your ideas down rather than an eraser and a pencil, then you're trying to fix everything. So when I first started, I would do a sketch with a ballpoint pen. I'd take a picture of it, then I'd draw over it in Photoshop. But now I kind of streamlined it and I just draw in Procreate on my Apple iPad. And it's so much faster than before. Basically how I start for a job is I will get like a description like, hey, we need a picture of Fluttershy looking sad. So I'll draw a couple ideas and they'll say, oh, we want the second idea. So I'll take that drawing, tighten it up, and then either get an approval or they'll know that my stuff is quality enough. So I'll go all the way to the final art. They'll go, yes, we like the line art, go ahead and color it. Then I will render it. I do a little different step than other people. I put a lot of gradients and shading and highlights to make it more three-dimensional. Mm-hmm. It depends on how the piece is. When I do like just the character cards, it can take a couple hours, but when I do full-blown illustrations, like say the cover for the box art or for the game, it can take up to like 3 days. just doing a final finished polished piece, because I don't just do flat colors. I like trying to give textures and things.
Hmm. That definitely reminds me with like the character cards where like Twilight Sparkle, she has like the cutie mark in the background, but it's still her right there, versus how like the boxes, they definitely pop. Like in the core set, you definitely see Ponyville, or definitely with familiar faces, you see the adventures and stuff that Discord or Starlight Spike went through. For specifically, if you were using the more traditional, how long would that usually take for it versus the digital?
So I don't use digital, or so I don't use traditional for pony, because it just takes way too long. But I do a lot of traditional stuff for sketch cards. I don't know if you know what those are. They're like trading cards for baseball, but with official licensed characters. So those are much smaller. So each card on average would take maybe about 2 hours to do, from anywhere from sketching to the final inking and highlights. I usually go back and forth between watercolor and pen, and it's usually like a mixed media piece.
Awesome. I got another question for you. This one may seem like a similar question I asked before, but it's kind of deep. But what draws you to draw a pony, specifically like My Little Pony? We're at a pony convention, so I'm kind of curious of what made you want to draw the ponies. Is there like a certain element to the main six and the friends that is like appealing? Is there more like you can create that may not be possible with other like traditional artwork for it? What specifically draws you to draw a pony?
It's like a huge childhood nostalgia moment to be able to work on a product that I watched when I was a kid. That, you know, I met Lauren Faust and how she was trying to get her original Galaxy Girls out there, but then ended up kind of incorporating it into Pony. And Pony just symbolizes that innocence and that friendship that we haven't had in a lot of shows lately, of kind of gritty and dark, you know, what if it was cynical? But Pony just has that kind of optimistic, what if we could be friends? How can we overcome our problems? And just the visual aesthetic of the fourth season just really spoke to me, being someone who was influenced by anime in the 90s. You know, most people don't realize 80s cartoons were animated, some of them partially in Japan. So there's that bleed over. So I just very much loved the bold pop of graphics and said, I want to work on that. That's something that like a girl-led property in this day and age, it's like, please put me on a girl-led property. Pony was just happened to be a wonderful thing I was able to get a part of.
Awesome. I got one last question because I want to make sure we talk a little bit RPG with Ryan. Can you tell me, for both your artwork and specifically Pony, is there a character or a technique such as line work, the coloring, for especially with digital or shading, that is most difficult?
Okay, so I can answer both.
Sure.
So the wonderful thing about the Pony cartoon is they use puppetry to animate their stuff. The hard thing about drawing something from a puppeted animation to a two-dimensional drawing is when all the details overlap, like the timber wolves. Those things are impossible to draw. I had to draw some for the RPG, and I was like, you know, so I'm sitting there doing a bunch of referencing from the cartoon. I'm like, how is this thing put together? And then there was like the crocodile thing, and I forget what it was called, but I'm like, whoa, so different. But I think in terms of like the artwork technique that can be the most difficult is, unlike other shows, My Little Pony employs the colored lines. And when you do a lot of rendered drawings, sometimes either the line work will get lost, or it looks odd because you're so used to doing black line art. But it's definitely the most tedious part because you want to make sure you don't have any pixels left. Like, what's that fuzzy? No, you can't do that. So you have to go in there and clean it up really tight. And it's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end.
Absolutely. I saw some late people come in. I want to tell y'all welcome for coming in. Welcome for joining us for the Deckbuilder and RPG and artwork chat. We are live streaming in Mary, Chris, and Ryan from Renegade Studios to talk about it. So we've been on with them for about 20 minutes. So I want to make sure I get some time in with Ryan and get some Q&A from the audience as well. Before we do that, I want to know, with a princess set coming up, we're going to start with Ryan and then Chris and then Mary. Who is your favorite princess?
Luna's my favorite princess.
Luna, you said is your favorite
absolutely.
princess?
I think she has the most interesting arc. And just whenever we get into like the psychology of Luna and feeling guilty about being Nightmare Moon, I find those some of the most fascinating episodes. Do
you like old design Luna or new design Luna?
I need more context. What do you mean old design versus new design?
Season one versus all the other seasons.
I guess all the other seasons, because that's just the Luna I'm used to.
Gotcha. Chris, what about you? Who's your favorite princess?
I mean, I'm wearing my favorite princess. I don't know if you can see it. Oh no, I flashed
Disappeared.
over. There you go. Nice. There's
Oh, I see
Princess
another
Luna for
Luna.
a bit. Yeah, exactly. So she was honestly the Nightmare Moon scenario. I was like, whoa, and then she turns into a good guy eventually, but she still has to like get over her behavior as the former Nightmare Moon. Really cool to see.
Awesome. Mary, who's your favorite
So-
princess?
Because I'm both an artist and a writer, I have two answers. Design based, I love Cadence. Her design speaks to me. Her aesthetic is great. Writing, I like Luna because I completely identify where the episode where she's trying to fit in, she's loud, wah! Because, you know, I was a very shy, quiet person, then trying to correct that, you overcorrect and you're super loud and oh, sorry, my bad. You know, trying to learn how to fit in with other people. And it was very personally, just resonated with me.
You're picking all my favorites, even though Celestia is also one of my favorites, just with the pure main design with all the different colors. Cadence is my number one too, so I can understand like the artwork and the designing part of it for sure. Ryan, let's talk some RPG though. Let me bring up my other questions that I had for RPG, but let's talk a little bit about it. How long has the RPG been in development for from it? Because when you bring into the aspect that Renegade has been working on Power Rangers, they've been working on G.I. Joe, they've been working on Transformers. Bringing Pony in is kind of the next one with it. And with this RPG, it's a little bit different from based on the Renegade Con live stream that is going to be more focused on like, again, team building and working together versus like straight up combat, like the Power Rangers would face a monster and summon their Zords by the end of the episode. And the world is saved at that point. But tell a little bit about the RPG for Pony.
Sure. Well, so to answer the timeline question, the Renegade got the license to all three of them about 3 years ago. And the idea was that we would do the 3 action adventure brands first, and then My Little Pony would be like the next volley of core rulebooks that we would put out, which right now is a volley of 1. So yeah, about 3 years ago, we started working on the Essence 20 system. And then once we got Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, and Transformers to the printer and out the door, we started working on My Little Pony and making sure that even though it used the same system as the other 3 and it would be fully compatible. So if you want, Flint to be riding Rainbow Dash, you absolutely can. And the game is completely balanced to do that. But odds are you're going to be playing these games on their own. And we wanted to make sure that My Little Pony didn't just tell the action adventure episodes, but also all of the more social episodes and more art and character driven episodes. So My Little Pony introduces a whole bunch of new mechanics to Essence 20, mostly about conflict resolution and challenges outside of combat to add a lot more depth to the scenes between the fights and making fights a lot more optional as a way to resolve, the problems you have with other people or other ponies.
Awesome. So you would say that is definitely all about the more focused on the narrative, encouraging team building versus like just I have the most powerful stat. We're going to use that to overcome such a challenge or something, or just brute force it.
Well, I do feel that mechanics are part of storytelling, and that if you are choosing to make one of your stats much stronger, there is a reason your character chose to that. There is a reason that you want to do that, and there is a way that you're interacting with story elements different from how anyone else did. So I'm not going to say no, there's no mechanical emphasis, but there is also the story elements, and just it's the merging of the two, the merging of how rules and story work together to make a role playing game.
Awesome. Delving a little bit more into the RPG, can we talk a little bit about character creation? Everybody has their OC, everybody has their ideal pony or creature character that they want to play in game. During Renegade Con, one of the burning questions everyone kind of really wanted to know was what races and creatures were going to be playable in the core book. My question delves even a little bit deeper than that. How are cutie marks going to be represented versus just it being a powerful stat or a powerful ability in other systems?
Sure. So to touch on the first part, the reason that the only creature types you can play in the first book are going to be the 3 pony types is actually ties into cutie marks. We knew that we had to flesh out everything related to pony culture before we can move on and really give a lot of room to dragon culture, griffin culture, changeling culture, etc. And still introduce things like those new conflict resolution mechanics and a magic system, which Essence 20 never had. So we wanted to focus in on the 3 main pony types and the ways that they cross over, one of which is the cutie mark. And so the cutie mark, we represented it. There's 3 levels to it. One of them is you have complete freedom to design it however you want, and the character sheet includes a box for you to draw your cutie mark. And then we wanted to make sure that the mechanics for it were simple and clear. So we said, pick one of the skills, and there are 21 skills that you can choose from, and tie it into your cutie mark. And whenever that skill comes into play, you get a bonus. You get what's called an upshift, because just briefly, Essence 20, you don't roll a d20 and a bonus. You roll a d20 and another die, and the better you are at a skill, the bigger that die. So your cutie mark gives you an automatic upshift, which means you're always going to be a little bit better at your talent, your cutie mark talent, than you will be in anything else.
Awesome.
I said there were 3 elements, but I think that covers all of them. So I'll just say there's 2 elements, and if I remember what the third one was, I'll get back to it.
Sure. Next question for it was, again, talking about character development, talking about kind of like the themes of the RPG. Using Power Rangers as the example, each color almost has like their own particular style of gameplay or their own flavor, where like the Green Ranger has a little bit of the loner / the wild card vibe. The Red Ranger has more of the leadership support vibe. The Blue Ranger is all about knowledge checks and so on. For My Little Pony, we have similarities with Pegasus and Fly and Unicorns and Magic. Should we expect it to delve deeper, such as how they connect with their own element of harmony, or something even more like Earth Ponies are going to be the traditional tank of the group?
Sure. So when we were designing Essence 20, we knew that we wanted 3 elements for character creation: your role, your origin, and your influences. And origin is the thing that changes the most based on the theme of the book. And so in a game like My Little Pony, your origin represents your creature type. So when creature type is a major part of the brand, so the same thing as Transformers, your vehicle type is tied to your origin. Whereas where it's a little more homogenous, like in G.I. Joe, we wouldn't just have human, and that's your only origin option. So in G.I. Joe, it's more your training. It's basically whatever got you to right before your call to adventure, whatever you were doing or however you were defined, that's your origin, which is why in My Little Pony, that's your creature type, which again right now is just Earth Pony, Pegasus, and Unicorn, but more will be coming. I already know we've got several more in books that are in development. So people that were worried about the origins definitely know that there are more coming. So the way you define how you interact with the world and how you solve problems is your role. And in My Little Pony, your role is your element of harmony. So there is the spirit of generosity, honesty, kindness, laughter, loyalty, and magic. And each one's perks and abilities tie into that theme. So like generosity has a lot of abilities that give bonuses to your allies, and they tend to be better bonuses than you get from anyone else, but you also have to take a penalty because you are generous. You are making a sacrifice for someone else's benefit. Whereas laughter we get a little bit meta because you actually get bonuses to your character if you as a player make the people around the table laugh. And there's just other elements of that kind of thing. We just wanted to play into the experience of being that type of pony. But we also have a couple of open-ended abilities where, let me just double check what it's called. Anyway, it basically says if you act in harmony with your element of harmony. So if you are making a generous choice or an honest choice and the rules don't quite cover it, you still get a benefit just by embodying your element of harmony. You should be rewarded for it.
Awesome. Well, my questions went away. I gotta ask, similar to the question I asked Chris and I asked Mary, was how long does it kind of take for like an RPG, especially because of the books itself and making sure everything's compatible, making sure everything is balanced? How long does that take from beginning to end? And I know it's still in pre-order and everything, but for the mechanics part.
For the mechanics part, it probably takes me about 3 months, something on this scope. Like now that we've got the framework for an origin, it'll probably take me a lot less time to design a new origin. But really to just take an outline and turn it into a rule book, it takes about 3 months to make sure I'm doing all the research, to make sure I'm getting all the terminology that the system is using. Like there was an argument with editors about whether it should be Pegasus or Pegasi or Pegasi. And it's like, yes, I know that Pegasus is the more proper and preferred term, but My Little Pony really has an emphasis on Pegasi, and so we should make sure we use the ones that they're using on the show, etc. So the writing phase takes about 3 months, but then there are editing phases, and there's called a development phase, which just makes sure that all the pieces fit together properly, and that we haven't accidentally created like a combo of abilities that will make the most generous and powerful pony in the world somehow. So yeah, there's a lot of stages, and then we bring in a cultural consultant to make sure that we haven't presented anything in an unintentionally offensive way. And around that same time, we're also bringing in the artists to do their art orders, and then of course it has to go to the licensor. They're the license. It has to go to Hasbro, and the My Little Pony team has to make sure that we are not misrepresenting any part of their brand.
Right. I got one more question for you, Ryan, and then I'm gonna since y'all know about the questions I sent y'all, I do want to combine some of them, so I'll just have everybody, whoever wants to answer a question before we get into some audience Q&A. So Ryan, I got one more question for you. In general, the reception has been, what has the reception been to the E20 system just in general? I know on Discord and the My Little Pony RPG servers for it, as well as like even my own Power Ranger group that I DM for, people have been very much constantly chatting and generally just excited about the mechanics, about not just the upcoming book release, but also just designing their characters. But also they feel like it's not very, very stat heavy for it in the sense of like maybe like some of the other systems, but it lets them really delve into their character and really do things that may not be traditional for it. So talking for E20 just a moment, how has the reception been for that? Both again for Pony and then just the general community as a whole.
So because the community is so great, it does kind of skew my, like it biases my impression. I get the feeling that people absolutely love Essence 20 and the people love interacting with it and talking about it on the Renegade Discord server. And luckily, we've actually got some stats to back that up because ICV2 posts the best-selling RPGs of every quarter. And they are saying that the last one that they rated, so Transformers hadn't been out yet, but G.I. Joe and Power Rangers both ended up on the top 5 RPGs selling. So between that and watching reviews and then just interacting with the community, it seems like people are overall very happy with it. And my main book before My Little Pony was G.I. Joe, and that one really especially seemed to have struck a chord. It was the one we expected to do the least because of the 4 brands that we're dealing with. It's the one that just has the least pop culture presence right now, and yet somehow the RPG really seemed to strike a chord and people really gravitated towards it.
Absolutely. I can attest for running the E20 with my group. They absolutely enjoy the E20, and they like that. Not only do they have things outside of combat, but also too that how it progresses. They love the specializations. So I want to ask everybody for this one. Starting with Chris for this one. Was there a prototype mechanic that was cut or something cool in an initial idea that you just could not implement for it? Same thing to Ryan for anything in the RPG that it just hasn't meshed well yet, as well as Mary, any artwork or something of a particular thing where you had to change an artwork out entirely.
Sure. So I joined after this, but one of the few concepts that was pushed around was when you tackled an active hurdle, you actually had to pay some or if not all of your sugar cubes, even if you failed. That would have like made the game an hour extra longer, plus probably made it impossible for the team to overcome. So that was quickly removed. But for me, pain is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, pleasure. So I wanted to make sure that still the ponies will have a challenge on their hands. There's nothing stopping me from being like, yeah, you need to pay a little extra to get yourselves over the hump.
Yeah.
For me, when I was developing the magic system, there was an element of it. It's called the cost. When you cast a spell, you get a cost. You downshift your magic stat a certain amount. And for a while, the cost was variable. So if you wanted to affect multiple ponies, you could pay more and more cost on your spell and get more targets per downshift, or if you wanted to affect an area, or if you wanted things to last longer. So there were all these little decisions you had to make just to cast one spell, and it dragged any turn that involved spell casting to like a real grind, even just if it was done like efficiently. And it was rarely done efficiently. People were always like weighing the odds of like, oh, if I just cost one more, then I can be that much more effective. Oh, but maybe I shouldn't. And it was not working. It was a problem. And so we just solved it by making all spells have a flat cost. And we made different versions of similar spells so that if you just want the better version, the more people, the longer lasting, that's just a different spell now.
Gotcha. Mary, was there a piece that you worked on a lot that was like it just how you initially visioned it, you had to change it up a bit, or was there like a particular like feature like you mentioned with the Timberwolves that's just difficult to draw?
Not really for me. Everything is pretty straightforward. I get a description of what we need. There was one piece with the Cutie Mark Crusaders that I had to rework a couple times just so that we could actually take it apart so that they could use it for packaging or other items. But I think that the hardest thing to not do is to want to draw fan art and post it of the things you created because the book isn't out yet and you can't do that. So I've created a couple of really cool things, but I don't think I'm allowed to say until the book comes out. But I'm like, when it does come out, you'll probably see a flood of fan art.
I got a few laughs. All right, so I got one more question, then we're going to turn it over to the audience for any Q&A questions that y'all have. So, do you have an OC, or is there a particular pony that you are wanting to play, like in the RPG?
I'll go first. I know it's kind of a taboo in the culture, but my OC is Paper Heart. She is an alicorn because I'm like a creator. I both write and draw. So I figured, well, why not? You know, I'm in the same industry as animation and stuff. She's actually, you probably can find her on my DeviantArt page. She's just Paper Heart. She's blue and she's got tricolored pink, blue, and yellow hair. Big hair like the 80s, because that's what I do.
Awesome.
For me, my OC would be Rook Rush. So I'm a Toronto boy. I grew up listening to Rush, and then I got into chess over the lockdown. And rooks are an amazing piece in chess. Of course, I could have gone with the knight, but rooks are cooler. And then finally, like I tend to rush into certain situations headlong, so I may get myself in trouble. So that's why my teammates had to pull me out with the gutter.
Awesome.
So for me, this came up recently at Renegade Con when we were the G.I. Joe panel and we were talking about transitions to the My Little Pony panel. I was also active in chat and I made a joke about Sergeant Trotter, like a ponified version of Sergeant Slaughter, and I spelt it with an AU. And then someone else in the chat said like, or Trotter, and spelled it with an O, more like trotting. And then everyone else in chat was saying like, oh, you're being funny to that other guy. And I was like, no, Sergeant Trotter's mine. And so now it's definitely my OC. I own Sergeant Trotter. It was my idea. Not that other guy who was just offering an alternate spelling to Sergeant Trotter.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A from the audience. So does anybody from the audience have a question that you want to ask anybody from the Renegade staff? Yes, sir.
For the Deckbuilder game, was there a reason why there's only enough for 4 players?
Sure. So I'm going to repeat it. This one will probably be for Chris, if you didn't hear it. But for the Deckbuilder game, why was the max players only 4 players?
So that's a loaded question. But when the core set was developed, it was really developed in mind that the downtime shouldn't be an issue for gamers. Because if you play for a 5 or 6 player game, not to say that they take very long, but you have the chance for not doing something within the next like 10 minutes if someone has a long term. So really like 1 to 4 is the right sweet spot for the game, and I think that brings out a lot of opportunities for players to actually stand on their own hooves and make sure that they're contributing in a good way.
Awesome. Do I have another question in the audience? Anybody have a burning question you want to ask Chris, Ryan, or Mary? We'll start with you, Bramwell, and then I'll come right back to you. Yes.
How did you get started in your career path?
Sure. So this will be an everybody question. Mary, Chris, Ryan, how did you start in your career path and get to basically right now?
For me, I just started at conventions showing my artwork. I started off at anthology comics, then I moved on to licensed trading cards, back into comics with covers, dashed over to animation for like production, back to comics, self-publishing, and then writing. And then my fan art caught the attention of Renegade, and now I'm doing Renegade stuff.
Awesome.
I've always been writing something. Like even as a kid, I would just make picture books and present them in my class. Usually I wouldn't do my homework, but I would be doing this optional extra work. And as long as it was writing related, I was happy. And so then I got a creative writing degree at university. And then specifically for game design, I got into podcasting a long time ago. I've been podcasting for 15 years, and I have what was originally supposed to be a Dungeons and Dragons support podcast turned into it was called 3.5 Private Sanctuary, and it was just as 3rd edition came to an end, I made a podcast about like, oh no, let's keep supporting 3rd edition. And then Pathfinder came along and it's like, oh, you're doing the same thing. So podcasts were so new that everyone just wanted to tell me absolutely every thought they've ever had on game design because nobody had ever interviewed game designers before. So I accidentally gave myself a university level game design course just by interviewing people as they were creating Pathfinder, which became one of the best selling role-playing games of all time.
Awesome.
And then for me, I got into game design because one night in 2012, I dreamt that I was playing testing a game of mine with family and friends. And that game ended up being part of a good year or so of playtesting. It sucked, but all my friends told me, you better get into game design or else. And so when I switched over to lighter games that I can actually handle, I designed Lanterns and then my Renegade relationship going forward there.
Awesome. You had a question.
Yes. With regards to the upcoming RPG. What are some things like outside of adventure, outside of combat? What sort of things are there going to be? Is there going to be a downtime system?
Okay, I'll repeat your question back. Ryan, this will be for you. In the upcoming RPG, is there going to be essentially a downtime system that's not necessarily focused on like a combat or the problem solving? Did I ask your question correctly?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, so there's not necessarily a downtime system in the core rulebook, but what a lot of other RPGs consider downtime, we can actually create a lot of drama and explore as just like storytelling challenges in a My Little Pony role-playing game. So I believe there's something in mind for something closer to a traditional downtime system in one of the upcoming source books. But for now, no, it's more the idea of actually exploring the drama of what the character is doing and why, and seeing how well they're succeeding at it and if it's causing them any stress.
Awesome. Yes, sir.
What's the downtime system?
And it's asking, this is another Ryan question for you. What is the downtime system?
So traditionally, like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you want to own a shop, you probably don't want to actually role play being a manager of a store and doing all that. So a downtime system is a way of saying, when you're not adventuring, here's 5 days of you being a manager of an armor shop or whatever kind of shop it is. And it's reduced to one role, and it usually has very little narrative function. It's a characterful part of your backstory that you don't want to spend too much time on. Whereas in My Little Pony, the equivalent, like running Rarity for you would be a full adventure. Like just spending a day in a dress shop would absolutely be an opportunity to roll a lot of different skill tests and to achieve very specific goals. So yeah, so in other games, things that would just kind of be like hand waved actually get a lot of spotlight in My Little Pony.
You remind me of the campaign I run for my other friends for it, where we do My Little Pony as well. But it just makes me laugh about the what you compared about for the downtime, Ryan, and how some of the funniest moments or one of their best adventures they've ever had is the moments you would never think of. So in my group, for example, there was we had an adventure. It was about a month long for jury duty, and that is the one they talk about all the time. I don't know why, but you're right. It's those downtime ones are really funny. So I had to throw that in. You were giving me memories for it. Does anybody else have any questions that you want to ask Renegade staff? Ask Mary, ask Chris, ask Ryan. They are here for the next 13 minutes. Yes.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
This might be very more than the other for the others, but
yeah.
I guess if you've ever had to say learn a new style, because obviously say doing sketches for superheroes is a style or an action process will be very different than say the ponies themselves.
Sure.
More abstractly working with say one system or another. How I guess would you go about, or how in your experience has it taken to say re-familiarize with a completely new system or lore set?
Sure. So this will be a Mary question, and I'm going to repeat the question back because that was a lot. So you comparing superheroes versus saying pony, how is the technique and refamiliarizing yourself with a different one entirely? I think I got the question.
Style emulation or just in general?
Style emulation or lore just in general for working with a completely different medium from like a superhero where they have certain action poses versus saying My Little Pony where they would not have those.
Okay, so being an artist means you have to be multifaceted, and basically you end up watching several episodes of Pony, or you read the comics, or you look at like say superhero stuff, and you just have to learn how to be an emulator. You kind of turn into a style chameleon. So, sometimes I've done so many styles that I forget what my own stuff looks like because you're like, oh, wait, I don't need to draw that way anymore. And that's why, like, when I do my art for the comics or the books or the covers for the games, I'm very, very on model because the licensor wants to see it that way. So you don't want it, like, if the characters are only seen in the 3/4 straight on or side view, that's what I do. Because that minute that you go to 2/3, you're like, I'm not sure that's quite right. So you just basically have to just keep jumping into different swimming pools for each job, and then just like eat, drink, and sleep all of those styles when you're working on that project. And then you kind of just got to rinse all of that away and then do the same thing for a different property. So it can be overwhelming at times, especially if you have like 5 different projects at the same time, but that's why I try to space them out or do a different type of art job like colorist work.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I'm going to do one more question because I want to spend 5 minutes with some upcoming products, as well as like have any final thoughts from Chris, Ryan, and Mary. And I have to say, Ryan, I keep looking at the background you have. That's fantastic. I keep seeing, I'm like, look at all the amazing.
I am a big G.I. Joe guy, but I am also a My Little Pony fan.
We're going to have to get you more pony stuff for sure.
You can borrow some of mine if you want to see.
I have a big Mac handy.
Oh, nice.
Look at all my ponies.
Mine's
Wow.
pale in comparison to what you've got.
Beautiful. That is fantastic. The entire audience was like, ooh. That was nice. Can you top that, Chris?
No.
That was awesome. Thank you. Yes, sir.
For each of them, I'd like to ask, what is their favorite thing they contributed to the deck builder?
Sure. So this is for everybody. Mary, we'll start with you, then Ryan, then Chris. What is your most favorite thing or one thing that you have contributed specifically to the deck builder?
So I guess
I love doing the covers. It's the first thing you see.
Or like a favorite art or a mechanic or something.
Okay. I think my favorite part of the whole job is just being able to design the front covers for everything.
Awesome.
For me, it's trying to come up with all the characters and make sure that they are in tune with how they are in the show. So for example, Discord, when I had to introduce him as a character, I was like, what's a Discordian thing you could do? Oh, everyone gets to remove a card from the deck. Or for Trixie or Starlight Glimmer, their relationship. Trixie's trying to gain friendship in her way, and then Starlight Glimmer is trying to see herself as a good guy now, giving them allies and actions to use for benefiting their teammates is what I had to do.
I haven't done any work on the deck building game, so my favorite thing about the deck building game is getting to do panels with Chris.
Yeah, that's the best answer. I haven't done any work for it. So before we wrap up the panel, get any final comments, questions. First, I want the audience to go, ooh. That was not loud enough. Do it again. Ooh. Now, because guess what we have to show y'all that we have upcoming that I want to talk a little bit really fast with Chris with it because we're running out of time. We have set forward with the princess pageantry here. If y'all can't see it, I think it's close enough with it. Chris, can you give us a very brief snapshot of the princess pageantry?
So you get to play as Luna, Cadence, Celestia, and Shiny Armor, and each one of the characters have a certain new lightness to them. So, for example, because Celestia and Luna are the most powerful ponies in Equestria, we had to give them not one, but 3 different abilities you could use, but each one, makes sense. And then for Cadence and Shiny Armor, their relationship tops all romance relationships ever. So they can actually help their team, their better half with cards out of their turn. So it's a really cool experience to showcase both of them. And then you have a nice little mechanic that I introduced more clouds called festivals. So festivals are a really big part of pony culture, as you know. Picky Pie's going, head to toe with her parties and all that stuff. I really wanted to add more clouds to the game. So if you don't address these festivals in time, Picky Pie's going to turn into Pinkamena, and then bad things may happen.
Awesome. All right, let's wrap up this panel. For everyone here, still stick around for after the panel because we have a nice little surprise for y'all. But you have to be present at the end of it. So we're gonna start with Ryan. Since we started with you last at the beginning, we're just gonna start with you first. Final question, kind of. As you can see, we're doing this panel virtually. Have any of y'all either attended a My Little Pony convention in person? And I mean, Renegade Studios is only what, up or down the street near BabsCon? I'm not saying that y'all should show up, but y'all should probably maybe go to BabsCon or something. It's only in April. But have you ever been to a My Little Pony convention?
No, and so unfortunately, one time there was My Little Pony convention happening at like the hotel right next to PaizoCon, which is a Pathfinder convention, and I was at the Pathfinder convention, and at one point people came over from the My Little Pony convention and said, "Hey, if anyone wants to come over, we're a great welcoming bunch. Come on over to our hotel and we'll just hang out." And I passed on the invitation because at that point I wasn't into My Little Pony yet, and it is one of the things I regret as a con goer that I did not take them up on that.
Well, with Renegade, you at least maybe have more than enough opportunity maybe to go to Pony. I mean, you're selling Pony products. I'm just saying.
I know, but just geographically speaking, I'm from Montreal. Renegade's headquarters may be down the street from that con, but I am in a different country.
Oh, you can try. It's just down the street. It's a long walk. It may take a couple days. You'll be fine.
I think a couple of days is really underestimating how far.
Mary, what about you? I think I've seen you at conventions, so I want to say yes.
I've been to about 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like Equestria LA, Pacific Pony Con, Ponies Expo, and then there was another one. I'm forgetting, but yeah, if you want me to be at a PonyCon, just ask them to have me as a guest. Most of the time, as a guest of honor, they take care of all the travel and all that, and then I could totally show up. Otherwise, if it's not next to me, I probably would just be teleconferencing like at these panels.
Yeah. Chris, you're the last one. Have you been to any pony convention?
I haven't so far, but I'm not ruling it out. Work has been pretty hectic for me outside of game design, but I've been to Gen Con and Origins, so you can usually find me there at a game convention.
Awesome. Mary, Ryan, Christopher, I want to thank all of y'all for joining us, as well as for the audience for coming in and letting us talk to y'all about Deckbuilder, talking about RPG. I do definitely want for everybody here to give Ryan, Mary, and Chris a round of applause for joining us. If y'all can hear that, there are plenty of people clapping for you. Chris, Ryan, Mary, is there any final words you want to say, anywhere they can find y'all on social media to follow your works, any updates about the RPG, Deckbuilder, anything like that?
Yeah, so you can,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was like, you can find me at marybellamy.com or at ZoriLita, anywhere like Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, everywhere. Patreon, you can support me at Patreon. And if you're ever lucky enough to go to San Diego Comic-Con, I will have a table in the small press, and for ZoriLita Mary Bellamy.
You can find me at C Chung Games on Twitter primarily, where I just rant about certain stuff, but more specifically YouTube for Renegade Game Studios. March 1st, do keep in mind that we're going to have a sneak peek of certain things. You may see some new pony stuff.
Ooh, audience. Ooh.
The best place to find me is on the Renegade Game Studios Discord server. I'm always hanging out in the RPG sections, especially the ponies and the G.I. Joe sections. And just keep an eye out for the My Little Pony role-playing game core rulebook, which is coming out in June. And I'm not guaranteeing they do this, but Renegade tends to, if you pre-order it, you'll get the PDF. You tend to get the PDF a couple of weeks early. So we might be talking about early June. We might be talking about as early as May. You could potentially, no guarantee, but potentially get the RPG book a little bit earlier than everybody else.
Yeah. I think that's very true, because I remember that with the Power Ranger when I think it came out a little bit earlier while we were waiting on the shipping. So again, Chris, Ryan, Mary, thank you again for joining us virtually to talk about the upcoming Deckbuilder stuff, current Deckbuilder, and the upcoming My Little Pony RPG here at HarmonyCon 2023 in Dallas, Texas. So again, thank y'all for joining us. Thank you again, audience, for joining us. I hope we have given y'all a huge interest or continuing interest in the RPG and the Deckbuilder. So again, thank y'all. Thank you again. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their convention. Thank y'all.